Welcome to today's product update for Baramundi Management Suite 2025 R2, which is released right now. So good opportunity to have a look at all the highlights with you together. So let's jump in. Let's start with some classic functionality of the Baramundi Management Suite. Inventory, for example. What's new in inventory?
Inventory has some enhancements, but I would start in the Baramundi Management Center first. So as you know, we have some kind of grid views where you can see all your endpoints. There we added a new function called advanced filter. So next to the normal filter section you already know, we now can easily add advanced filters, which are exactly like universal dynamic groups. And as soon as you did that, you can even save it as a universal dynamic group. Why am I starting like this? Because as soon as you're in the new conditions, you can easily go to software, that's what we're talking about here, and add a new criteria like name, version, or even vendor as a free text string field, which makes it easy, for example, to search for show me every endpoint where a software called Firefox is installed, and that's it. And software-wise, that's not the only thing. We also have a new bconnect controller to easily gather information through our API for all endpoints which software is installed or even just inventoried for this specific device, which makes it way more easy to address our API according software inventory.
So in inventory, it's about handling mass of data, and searching with free text is a good means to do that. Another module within the management suite is the vulnerability scanner. It's also a lot of data which has grown there over the recent years. It's more than doubled all these rules for vulnerabilities, and it was the time to come up with a new algorithm. This new algorithm we are very proud of because we managed to make it 3 times faster. So we can scan even more vulnerabilities from the databases, more than 35,000 meanwhile, and have less stress on the endpoints of the end user. So not disturbing the end user is anyway a goal that we always have a look at. And there's more to tell about not disturbing the end user.
Absolutely. You're talking about the job management for Windows devices. We added a new maintenance window because some jobs can take longer even if the vulnerability scanner is faster now. So you can easily set the maintenance windows for specific endpoints or even the entire group. So that means if the endpoint is not in this time frame, he's not allowed to execute any kind of job. But to even skip that, there is a forced start option where you can, as an administrator, say, it doesn't matter which validity is proven here, just run this job right now. There is a big notification prompting you like, be careful if you use this new option. That's not the only thing. We also enhanced the interval settings. Back then, the interval settings were kind of clumsy. Now they're in the new interface and the new GUI. And they offer you the possibility to address something like, hey, please run every second Tuesday of the month, for example, which is used by a universal interval setting and not only for Windows endpoints, for all endpoint types.
So it sounds like a very sophisticated scheduling management that we can offer. And speaking of scheduling, Hanno, there's also some scheduling introduced in our network discovery scanner.
Yes, exactly, you're right. The scheduling that Will has just mentioned that can also be used for our network discovery scanner. And this now helps you to get a better overview of your whole environment. So for example, you scan regularly and find recently added devices, so you can see the first contact, or you can scan devices which have been there but are currently not available any longer. And you can add these conditions to universal dynamic groups, and thus you can enter them to your dashboard and have a great overview what's new and what's currently offline and shouldn't be maybe. And if you've searched for with your SSH protocol, you find some devices that might be rather a Linux device and not a network device. And so we introduced a function that you can easily convert a network device into a Linux device. And that makes it much more easy to manage all your Linux devices. And Linux is my favorite thing at all in this release. Just imagine you found some Linux devices with your network discovery scanner and you want to manage them. You can now easily use your global SSH configuration, and you do not have to enter your root credentials on each single device, but now you can do it globally and then can do all the rollout for all the mass devices, whatever is out there. And if you do not want to use SSH directly, you have the possibility to use our recently introduced Linux agent. And this is really a great option to have if you cannot reach the device via SSH directly. For example, if it's located in the internet or if it's in the DMZ, if it's not allowed to communicate via SSH. Therefore, the agent helps you to tunnel all these management stuff that we do with SSH. It's tunneled via port 443, so HTTPS, which is usually everywhere available. And if you install the agent on an endpoint located in the internet, you can connect via gateway, of course, to our baramundi management server. And this now allows you to manage, let's say, almost every Linux device out there. And the update management that we introduced last time to check for updates and to see how many pending updates are there, you can now see details for these pending updates. So you get a new view where you can see all the version that is currently installed. And you also can see the version which is available to be updated. And if it's not updated, there might be a reason for this, and you can now see the reason. For example, if it's held back by the administrator itself or even by the distribution. And that gives you a really better overview about the update status on your devices out there.
Speaking of updates, Hannes, updates is not only improved within Linux devices, but also for Windows devices. We have some great news. When we think of updating Windows devices, we often make use of managed software in our suite. And in managed software, you have a tree of many versions. And in the past, you had to define which is the newest version to release and to deactivate the old ones. And to make it even more comfortable for the administrators, we have now introduced a feature that you can define always release the latest version and disable the old ones. So it makes it much easier to be always up to date and only release the newest Windows updates. So speaking of Linux, of Windows, Will, there's also some great news for mobile devices.
Yeah, that's right. So even in mobile devices, I would like to start with iOS. We have some new features. First of all, in iOS, there is an easy way, right as a job, you can send push notifications to a user on a job base like you already know it. And it can be a handy way to keep in contact or to inform the user, hey, it's done or the job is starting, whatever. But that's not it. Our remote desk solution, which was introduced for Windows, now allows you to manage iOS and Android as well. And depending on the management mode, you can either screen share, so you can see what the user is doing on a smartphone, or even to control the smartphone or the tablet.
Speaking of these different modes of silent administration from the background, remote access on the screen, there's also a third method that is spoken about more frequently, and it's called co-management, Hanno.
Exactly. Co-management is a very strategic position for us, and we introduced it last year. We continued this year, and we promise that we will continue this in the next years as well. And in this release, you find the opportunity to manage several Intune tenants. In the past, you could only configure one single tenant, but there are companies out there or partners, service providers who have to manage multiple tenants. And now we have the possibility to add more tenants in here. And when you synchronize all these tenants, you can now also synchronize attributes. All these attributes that are configured in Intune can now be synchronized to our own values, and you can use it inside the Baramundi management suite as well.
So co-management is a good example of integration. Integration is so important in nowadays. And for integration, Baramundi always develops this Baramundi Connect interface further. Now we have release V2 available. And if I'm not a programmer who is used to program against REST APIs, you're probably more familiar with PowerShell. PowerShell is the to-go language for all administrators. And for this purpose, we have introduced a new module, a PowerShell module, that you can use to directly access all these functions, very convenient within PowerShell. And it's directly available from the gallery. So this also, I think, a nice enhancement. So we've covered so many enhancements. Hanno, did we miss any highlights?
Any highlight?
Yeah.
Yeah. We still have one highlight here available. The Baramundi license management received an update in this release. In the past, we had licenses that were only assignable to endpoint, to devices. But if you work out there, you see that there are also different license types, for example, user devices. User licenses are meant because when you use Microsoft Office, for example, you have assigned a license to your person and you can use this license on different devices as well. And now we introduced this feature into the Baramundi license management. So you can configure all your licenses via Active Directory groups, and you can synchronize these groups and now get a much better overview about the licenses that are really in use out there.
Very useful and state of the art.
Exactly.
Will, do you also have one more thing to share?
I think there is some more to share. Our defense control has a new update. We do have a solution, a local administrative password solution, to easily enable a local administrator on all your Windows endpoints, which sounds cool, but there is a need to specify on which devices exactly you want to have this local administrator. So now there's an easy way using UDGs, the Universal Dynamic Groups, to specify on which group of endpoints you would like to activate or deactivate this function. That's pretty cool. And last but not least, we do have a new interface, GUI, user interface for our database manager. So it has a new fresh look and feel. The look is important for our existing customers, like there's sometimes a need to jump into the database manager again. But even this tool is the first contact point for all our new prospects and customers out there, and partners even use it more often. And back then, it did ask you a bunch of questions, like when to download stuff or where to set the database maintenance. And that was way too deep for the first contact. So we're now setting this by default back in the database. You can change all those settings later on, but for the first contact, we made it way more easy to get through the database manager.
As you can see from all those topics mentioned, there is something in the new release for everyone, I guess. And therefore, we would really recommend for you to install the new release as soon as possible, and also have a look at the documentation of release notes, but also the preview document that covers in more detail all the highlights that we mentioned today. Install it, have fun, have a good time.